Hey, good morning, everybody. It's March 21st, 2024. And today it's back to Fringe Binge. And also, before we do that, we're going to take a look at the new Ghostbusters Frozen movie trailer. Now, the film is set to release on 3/22 tomorrow. So we thought we'd take a look at this trailer for the Ghostbusters Frozen movie because it ties directly into some things that we've been talking about for a very long time, specifically the fire and ice. And now that you are starting to realize that I'm not making any of this up, that we've been talking about fire and ice now long before this trailer came out. Now, the trailer came out January, but even weeks and months before that, we were already talking about fire and ice. So we're going to cover that trailer today in anticipation of what the controllers have planned. Now, let's pull this up. The first thing I noticed was in the first 7 seconds, I've got this in slow motion with the sound turned off. The first thing that I noticed here is, of course, the Ghostbusters car, or whatever you call this. And in the background, we see the MasterCard logo, which of course is an eclipse. Now, I don't know if MasterCard's still around, but back when this film was set, MasterCard was a thing. Or this logo is what I'm saying. Of course, there are MasterCard still, but the logo I'm talking about. Well, let's take a look at this and let this kind of play out. The Ghostbusters car drives past the logo. Let's back this up a little bit so you could see it as it comes into frame. It's very prominent, and of course that has to stand for the eclipse that's coming up. Then at 1 minute and 6 seconds, I will turn part of the sound on for this, I guess. Let's get the sound on here for you guys. 1 minute and 6 seconds, we see a demon with horns, and literally behind him, the lightning strikes the One World Trade Freedom Tower. Now, there have been many decodes on the One World Trade Freedom Tower, but I think we drilled down pretty specific onto it, talking about its shape being an anti-prism, which is the same shape as a sulfur 8 molecule. So essentially, the One World Trade Freedom Tower we found was a giant middle finger back up to heaven made out of sulfur, the shape of sulfur, which is an anti-prism, which is also a crown. In other words, they knew that the crown was coming, the crown corona, and this was their thing that they did. We've also since found out that black sulfur is probably the ingredient that was included into the you-know-what. And so now it's all starting to come together and make sense that it was always about the sulfur and demons. Look at this. This demonic figure puts these horns on its head, and then it cuts away to the One World Trade Freedom Tower. So now that you know that our focus on the One World Trade Freedom Tower was not a stretch, and that this was always about a portal of demons coming through in a mass sacrifice event, now we can be able to see the rest of this for what it is. At this point, ice comes up out of the ground, so we've already had our fire, and now we have the ice, because what was the fire? The fire was the eclipse, right? That was the eclipse in the MasterCard logo. There's also a strange orb that appears in the trailer. But we go from the eclipse, the MasterCard eclipse, then we go to the ice. Now, it appears as though this demon is what opens this portal of ice. And we were just talking about this, weren't we? We were just talking about demonic presence being present during ice or cold. And I gave specific examples. The vaccine being held at sub-zero temperatures. Also in movies where you see a demonic spirit comes into a room and everything goes cold. And also hell being a punishment of fire, which would be the opposite of the ice, which would be a perfect punishment for a demon, right? The great thaw or something like that. So at this point, we see the ice coming up out of the ground, the release of hell from the ice, and then they say this.
By fear itself.
Let's play this at regular speed so you guys can understand this.
Like literally scared to death?
Men's hearts shall fail them out of fear, scared to death.
We might
The ice comes up out of the ground, and listen to what he says next.
be looking at a second ice age. We might be looking at a second ice age.
Now, when I started talking about a second ice age, actually we started talking about it way back in 2013, but more recently, as we've started to talk about fire and ice, and the Tlaloc sacrifice going on in Iceland and all these things, people thought we were crazy. But then you hear it in a movie trailer. Unbelievable.
We're gonna need all the help we can get.
Let's get to work.
So, the Ghostbusters and all the original characters came back, and then you just heard him mention the Ice Age. I think there's more here. Let's see here.
Heads up. It's all dark and horny at 12 o'clock.
So, this bizarre looking creature, this demon with these horns, like almost looks like a Slender Man,
12 o'clock.
spitting out ice. So, appears we have been over the target. Now, let me check in with you guys and we'll get into this Fringe, more Fringe episodes. We call this the Fringe Binge. We started with season 1. We're now on episodes 11 through 14, which is what we'll cover today. And the theme in these particular episodes seems to be bioweapons. Now, in this first episode, let's go ahead and start playing this here. In this first episode, there is a virus that is transmitted through water. Does that sound familiar? Let's take a look.
Literally millions and millions of organisms feed on us, reproduce within us. If your high school bio teacher told you that humans sit at the top of the food chain, he or she was dead wrong. Viruses, bacteria, protozoa, and fungi.
He drinks the water, and this particular epidemiologist slash teacher doctor is poisoned.
The four musketeers of the pathogenic world.
Look, simian hemorrhagic fever.
Then Walter mentions monkey fever, which is simian hemorrhagic fever. He mentions Ebola next, which I believe are going to be components of the last days plagues. And this episode aired 4 years before the US would have its Ebola outbreak. Watch.
HIV looked like a common cold by comparison.
Walter, right there.
Infected cells have a definitive spiderweb look. Ebola.
Please.
No time for the immune response. First the headaches, then the skin turns to rice pudding.
Walter.
This organism was developed from the same material that Olivia stole from her captors.
What job was that?
I shouldn't. He wasn't supposed to tell me.
It's okay.
Now, at this point, we realized that the organism was being spiked in the water of prominent people who they were afraid would spill the beans about an upcoming pandemic that they had already planned. And what they would do is they would give this spiked water to prominent epidemiologists to take them out. Watch.
The CDC, Centers for Disease Control, they offered him this big job, which meant moving to Atlanta, so it sounded like a big deal. 3 months. I knew he was going to take the job. He hadn't even told his wife about it yet. I figured that was going to be it for us.
What exactly was the job?
Task force to oversee the country's preparedness to fight off an epidemic.
The professor who died at Boston College, Dr. Kimberg, was offered a job at the CDC to co-chair a classified task force.
And?
He wasn't the only scientist asked. There was another one, Dr. Russell Simon from Cambridge. I'm trying to locate him now.
What? You think he's a target too?
I do. His sole responsibility was to respond to epidemics.
Sole responsibility was to respond to epidemics.
So far, I figured, why kill an epidemiologist? Unless you're looking to start an epidemic.
Get rid of the firefighter before you start a fire.
So, you just heard it with your own ears. And just yesterday, we had discovered 2 prominent epidemiologists in real life who died just before the pandemic who were associated with the CDC.
Thank you. No problem.
Both of those epidemiologists in real life happen to be black.
So the victim just needs to ingest it.
Exactly right, and then it grows. Fast.
Dr. Simon, over your options.
And is there any way to trace it, where it came from?
Walter doesn't seem to think so, no.
There'll be agents there on call 24 hours a day. Sure. Call medical assistance.
This organism is a single specimen of a virus for the common cold. Nasopharyngitis, albeit a gargantuan specimen, found.
They supersize.
The common cold virus. Wow. And this particular organism, apparently they find out, is a single-celled organism. You can almost look at it like a spike protein. Let's keep watching here.
Specimen, found.
They supersize the common cold, which, as it turns out, is disgusting.
Obviously, somebody's playing with us.
Yeah, they're showing off.
So you're saying that this is one single cell?
It's not unprecedented.
Killing epidemiologists with the common cold.
It is impressive.
What I want to know is what they wanted from you.
There's something hard inside here.
Now, let's get into another episode. The next episode, this might be episode 10. Well, it could be like 13, maybe episode 13. And this is about another bioweapon, which turns people into beasts after they receive a mark in their right hand. Watch this.
Force it.
What is it, a tumor?
Tumor is made of glass. Not unless a tumor is made of glass.
Getting bored now.
Cut open his hand.
What?
I want to see if there's a disc in it. Like Bowman's.
It's an old wives' tale to stop the bloody nose.
Now, this is the guy who actually turned into that beast that you just saw. And he's on this flight. This is before he turns into the beast. He's on this flight, and this is where the transformation occurs. And his symptoms start with a nosebleed. Now, interestingly, the woman sitting next to him sees that he has a bloody nose, and she tells him about an old wives' tale to treat nosebleeds. What is the treatment? A key or a set of keys on your back. That to me sounds like the key that opens the bottomless pit through the place where the Holy of Holies is in the back of the neck. Let's watch.
Wives' tale to stop the bloody nose.
And will it be ready in time?
Well, that depends on your definition of time. If you mean before...
It's an old wives'
If there's a disc in it. Like Bowman's.
It's an old wives' tale to stop the bloody nose.
And will it be ready in time?
Well, that depends on your definition of time. If you mean before he turns into a beast...
You should put keys on your back.
Excuse me?
Now, the man undergoes the transformation. He's on the plane. Now remember, we told you that fuselages of planes are hollow pipes, and they're often used to signify the macro image of a hypodermic needle. And I gave the example of snakes on a plane, right? The whole thing was basically that snakes inside of a hypodermic needle, the fuselage of the plane. So this whole concept of a beast being transformed in the fuselage of a plane has significance.
Information has come to this agency about a weapons buy. The goods? The same virus responsible for Flight 718.
They met at Oxford, a new college.
Now, next, Dunham and Peter go undercover to find out who is buying and selling these bioweapons. So they're sitting in front of a seller of bioweapons, trying to get to the root of, try to uncover this network. And the seller that's across from them, he gets cold feet. He starts trying to qualify Peter by asking him specific questions about how he met the buyer who was supposed to show up to buy these weapons. And what is Peter's answer about where he met the buyer? Well, he says White Horse. Watch.
We met at the White Horse on Wheatley Road. You know it?
So, what is the White Horse? Well, we'd already talked about this years ago. The White Horse Saloon, which is the root of all of the wealth of the Trump family. The White Horse in the Yukon. And Trump, basically went back and actually commemorated the White Horse Saloon. It was actually a brothel in the Yukon, and a bar and a hotel. And he commemorated it in his golf course in Scotland by naming the boutique inside of his golf course. He named it the White Horse as well. We found 666 in the logo of the White Horse boutique and spa at the Trump golf course in Scotland. We already exposed that. And then we also exposed Trump as Apollyon from the book of Revelation, Abaddon, the White Horse, right? Because Apollyon and Abaddon, a bad dawn, Apollo, and that's in his 66th floor penthouse. Now, 66 is 2/3 of the way to 666, isn't it? Which is a mark. But we haven't quite gotten there yet. There's still some nuance to all of this. But essentially, what Apollo did and what he did in antiquity was he was the bringer of the black phosphorus. Literally, an ancient god called Phosphorus led the way in the images of Apollo paintings as Apollo's riding on his chariot. You see phosphorus, and we've come since to realize that this really is the black phosphorus graphene. That's what it is. Now, Revelation says that Apollyon, the White Horse, carries the toxon bow, or a toxin, which could signify DNA, and that the White Horse rider is also wearing a corona or a crown.
Don't recall.
Indeed. 923 Church Street.
Now we get into this last episode. This is episode 14 that we're going to cover today. And Dunham encounters a time traveler. This guy that you see laying on the gurney here. And the time traveler's messing with Dunham. Basically telling her he starts playing mind games with her. Telling her that she's the only one who can save the world. And the only way she can do it is to complete these tasks. She has to perform these tasks that seem impossible. So this guy's testing her. And the time traveler tells her to go to address 923. He finally tells her where to go. Watch.
I don't recall.
Indeed. 923 Church Street, 47th floor.
Back, 923 Church Street. There's a device on the 47th floor.
Now we all know where 923 is. We cracked the code. 923 has 99 days left in the year. Its mirror date is April 8th, which is the date of the eclipse. Dunham shows up. She finds the bomb. She goes to the address 923, and the bomb starts out with a time countdown of 3:47 is what they want you to see here, because it's on the 47th floor. And then the scene cuts away. There's an intermission or a break in the script, and when they come back, the date is 3:20, or the time is 3:29, which is the opposite of 9:23. Now, 3:29, March 29th, is my birthday and happens to be the 88th day of the year, which also suggests some significance relating to the date 923, which is its reverse date, right? But this is weird.
It's rigged here for a reason.
Now, let's go back and see how many lights are on this board. Now, the test here is that Dunham has to use her mind to turn these lights off. Let's see how many there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 by 7 lights. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 by 7 lights.
It's rigged here for a reason.
So, let me recap that, because that was a lot of numbers, right? It wasn't really a lot, but it seemed like it. 9/23, September 23rd, has 99 days left in the year. And that floats because we got leap years and stuff, right? So, it's about 99 days. And then, if you take the mirror date, in other words, find the date on the calendar that is the 99th day of the year. So it's on the opposite side of the calendar, right? That date is the date of the upcoming eclipse, April 8th, the 99th day of the year. So these dates are opposites of one another. But what you also have with calendar dates is you have reverse dates. So 3/29 is 9/23 in reverse, right? So that has significance as well. Now, why does the enemy do this? Well, the enemy does this because the enemy wants to be like God. So he likes to use numbers to mark significant dates. It's, if you want to simplify it, it's the matrix. It's how our reality works. So let's go back into the chat here, see what you guys are up to. These episodes were absolutely loaded. We'll be back tomorrow with between the headlines, some coffee talk headlines. I've got already a couple stories pulled up. Big changes coming to Social Security and some other things. But let's go back into the chat, see what you guys are up to this morning. All right. All right. Buckeye Jim says 57. Can you ask the chat to pray for a woman named Lily? Absolutely. All right. Was all that pretty clear for you guys? Heroes TV series has eclipses, says Daryl. You know, that's one series I never actually looked at. I think I tried to watch the first couple episodes years and years ago when this channel started, and I just didn't make it through that. Now, I'm sure that the Ghostbusters Frozen movie will be loaded. They've been doing a lot of Ghostbusters movies, haven't they? Didn't they just do one that was an all-woman cast? And that was just like last year, wasn't it? So they're going hard on Ghostbusters. So we'll have to definitely take a look at that when it comes out. Thanks, Jackie. All right. Yeah, it's pretty clear, isn't it? It's pretty straightforward. There's an eclipse on March 25th, too. Thanks, Christy. That might be worth taking a look at. The new Godzilla has gems in it. All right. All right, you guys. Well, I guess I'm going to pop off of here. I'll see you guys tomorrow with Coffee Talk Headlines. Get caught up on some of these topics. Let me see if I can give you a sneak peek. Oh, NASA's literally has changed the trajectory, or so they claim, of an asteroid. Why would they be doing this now on the eve of this eclipse? Sounds to me like some kind of a setup. They said they actually made an explosion on an asteroid and were able to prove that they changed the trajectory. That's weird. So we got that for tomorrow. We've got a huge homeless roundup in California, which I believe is all by design. A proposition just passed that will allow people to round up all the homeless and put them in institutions. That's not a good thing. And that's pretty much what I have so far for tomorrow. But I'll get some other headlines together and we'll see you guys in the morning. Much love, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care and be safe.